welcome to Newsclick. Today we have with us Prabir Purkayastha from Delhi Science Forum. We are going to discuss about the latest nuclear deal signed between USA and Iran. Hello Prabir. We have seen that there is this nuclear agreement which has been signed between USA and Iran, which also includes the other nations, which is called P5+1. So what are the key features of this agreement which has been signed?
I think there are two aspects to this agreement. One is the aspect what Iran is giving up. And there's a whole lot of things that Iran has given up as a part of this agreement. Though the agreement is still not finished, there is 3 months' time to really freeze all the requirements that are there. So that we have to watch. So what is Iran giving up? It's giving up a lot of its centrifuges. From 19,000, it's going to come down to something like 6,000, out of which only 5,000 will be enriching uranium. Is going to really take its existing stock of 10,000 low enriched uranium and reduce it to 300 kg. It's going to also dismantle its Arak reactor, which is a research reactor with the capability of making plutonium. So it's a heavy water reactor with plutonium, and obviously plutonium is also for the bomb, could be for use for the bomb. It will be only used as a research reactor for having radioisotopes and so on. So there is significant things that Iran has conceded, and these concessions are something which the US could have got anyway in the past. In 2003, they had offered concessions that Iran at that point of time had only 164 centrifuges. So there is a whole set of negotiations which have taken place in the past, 2003, 2005, 2009. Iran has offered similar concessions which were not accepted by the US. The basic sticking point which Iran had always had, the right to the fuel cycle. That means we should have the right to enrichment. We will not make the bomb. We don't want to make the bomb, but we should have the right to enrich uranium. This is always a sticking point where all these agreements fail because US insisted they have to give up the right to enrichment, which they have as an NPT signatory. So Iran's basic concession that they have got is the right to enrichment, A, and B is lifting of the sanctions. Now the lifting of the sanctions is crucial for the economy, obviously, and there are two sets of sanctions, probably more, but two significant sets of sanctions. One in the UN Security Council, which are relatively much lighter sanctions. The much more serious ones are the US and EU sanctions, which have virtually thrown Iran out of the global financial system, the banking system and so on, and therefore makes its trade very difficult, including oil and gas. It basically has to revert to either getting payment for gold or as a kind of barter trade, which is what it is forced then to carry out. So in that sense, Iran needed to come back into the financial system, needed to come back to the global system. So the significant concession that they had always insisted that yes, we'll give up provided you agree to lift sanctions, and it seems that that has been agreed to by the US. What remains to be seen is how giving up its nuclear infrastructure, which it has agreed to, is linked to the lifting of the sanctions. Will it be open-ended? Will it depend upon IAEA's satisfaction? It will depend on the US and the EU satisfaction. So that has to be seen, because that could be again in the future a breaking point, because the agreement says clearly that if there is a some deadline which is missed by Iran, then the US and the United Nations sanctions can again snap back. So the structure of sanctions would still be left in place, so that in case there is a dispute, it's possible to reimpose sanctions.
So if you look at the entire agreement, there is also a provision which talks about that IAEA will be continuously monitoring Iran on these various grounds which you have been talking about. And the way which you are saying, it looks like it's more equal sort of, there is an equilibrium between USA and Iran. So who is benefiting more? Is it a win-win situation for both, or is it USA?
Global scenarios are not football. So win-win, win-lose is a different issue. But let's take what has happened. The US argument was Iran has to submit to us, has to give up all possibilities, all nuclear technology it has to give up, and it has to essentially submit to us. And therefore it was not so much about the weapons, nuclear weapons, because Iran has always said we're not building nuclear weapons. US intelligence agencies have said Iran is not building nuclear weapons. Even Mossad has said Iran is not building nuclear weapons, though Netanyahu claims otherwise. So all the intelligence reports have been very clear, Iran is not building nuclear weapons after 2003, and this is what they have taken as their philosophy. So therefore, this issue that Iran should give up its nuclear capability was really not the one that Iran was talking about, the symbolic ability to reprocess, but really about Iran's political submission to the US. So in that sense, submission has not happened. Iran has said, no, we will not submit, we will continue, we have the right to reprocess, we will keep token facilities for reprocessing. So that was their basic minimum. So I think on that we have to say, Iran has got something, US has got something. What I think is important is US has locked itself into a position where the kind of demands they are making on Iran, if Iran did not submit, they were being sort of locked into a position of war. Because then, having asked Iran to submit, having asked Iran to give up nuclear weapons, claiming that Iran is making nuclear weapons, and claiming that if they make nuclear weapons, we'll have to attack Iran. US diplomatic strategy was getting into a corner where they were forced into the position that Iran does not submit, then they have to go to war. Okay? And Iran had already said, if you blackmail us continuously, we'll build more centrifuges. 2003, 164. By 2005, they had come to 5,000. Now in 2015, they have 19,000 centrifuges. And don't forget this, that they started with only 164, which they're willing to freeze at that figure in 2003. And they had frozen for about a year when the negotiations were going on with EU at that point of time. So for Iran, it's basically getting the acceptance which was important, and the fact that the US is no longer locked into war and US is now claiming that they have got a victory. Now, it's not a question of who has victory, who has no victory, because that's really not the issue. If Iran was not making the bomb, there is no victory. But the fact that we have averted a lockdown into a war, I think that is important.
So what is the other significant portions of this entire agreement? Because when we saw the foreign ministers coming out and claiming it to be a historical agreement between the nations.
Well, it's something that we have to go back into history for. 79, when Shah of Iran fell, there was a siege of the embassy of the United States. There's a whole lot of things that happened at that time. From that time to now, Iran and US have been at loggerheads and have been seen as enemies. Much more than Iran, but US has seen Iran as its enemy and also as its regional opponent, because US is very clear, it wants to be the hegemon in every area of the world. So in West Asia, it found Iran to be a strong country with 80 million people. So it's not exactly a weak country. It actually provoked Iraq to attack Iran, and an 8-year-long battle with it. It was supported by the United States at the time, and now reports are there. They even gave battlefield intelligence to Saddam. They also supplied chemical weapons for which they hang Saddam later. So this is actually being given by the United States, by England, and so on. The same countries who invaded, on the name of WMD, invaded Iraq. So Iran has been on the crosshairs for a long time as a regional opponent, as a possible enemy of Israel and Saudi Arabia, which is the one they are propping up in this region. So therefore, the strategic balance was that Iran is a threat to the dominance of US, Israel, Saudi Arabia in this region. So that is the underlying issue that we have to see. So what has happened is Iran has weathered this 40-year-long or 35-year-long battle to subjugate it, and still remains as an opponent to United States. Second issue, I think, which is also interesting, is now there is this double threat. You have on one hand Iran, which is a traditional enemy, always a threat to Israel. The second enemy is supposedly the IS, or what's called the Caliphate or the ISIS, whichever name you want to give it. Now these are really sectarian forces who have the same ideology as the Saudi Arabian state has, namely Wahhabi Islam, which is not the inclusive Islam that we know of in the rest of the world. And this is the one which the United States has been in alignment with for the last more than 60-70 years. This has been their close ally in Egypt, in Syria, against Ba'ath, against nationalist forces, against, of course, the left, and so on. So this has been a whole history of that. So that alliance is currently fraying because you have the IS, which also could be a threat to American interest. Now, Iran in Iraq is in some sense having a tacit understanding with US on how IS is to be tackled. So that is also there. But let's also be very clear, at the same time, Saudi Arabia is attacking under the name guise of attacking Iran, attacking the Houthis. And they are not attacking Al-Qaeda over there, which is very much there in eastern Yemen. The Houthis are in northern and also now coming towards Aden, which is really the west part of Yemen. So you have Al-Qaeda also in Yemen, and they have seized a town because of the Saudi Arabian attack. Now they have seized a town, they freed 300 prisoners. So Al-Qaeda is very active, and Saudi Arabia is not opposing it. So the checkboard of West Asia is in a very unstable state. US has the problem of how to handle Iran, which is its long-term enemy, the axis of resistance, which is Hezbollah, Syria, Iran, with now Iraq being a part of Iranian forces when it comes to attacking IS, and Americans being sometimes the air force for the Iraqi army. So we have a very complex situation developing. I think at the moment we are going to see that Iran is still going to be the enemy as far as US is concerned, but they want to want to have the freedom of engaging with Iran, particularly for stabilizing Iraq, looking at the Kurdish areas where again they need Iran for containing the IS, but at the same time opposing Bashar al-Assad, helping Jabhat al-Nusra, which is Al-Qaeda, trying to help Saudi Arabia in Yemen, where they are actually acting as a logistics and intelligence support to the Saudi Arabian military offensive. So it's a complex picture which is developing. So I expect Iran still to be enemy, but the freedom to negotiate with them on certain issues, therefore not having them as enemy number one, which it was developing as.
So would it be wrong to say or right to say that since IS is a bigger threat for US these days, so it's a process to form a coalition on the ground since Iran is fighting IS on the ground, and it's also an old age policy of US of divide and rule among the West Asia?
Well, I think US is getting into a very dangerous game, because if they get into the Saudi Arabian Shia Sunni sectarian battle, which is what they're really supporting, then IS is with Saudi Arabia, IS is then on their side. At the same time, IS is a threat to the Iraqi government. So they would like a limited engagement with Iran to contain the IS, so it stays the pet opposition, as it were, against Syria, against Iran and other forces, but at the same time it doesn't become a threat to Saudi Arabia. So there is this, as you said, divide and rule, but also trying to play both sides against the middle. And in that, Iran will remain as a long-term strategic adversary, because Iran is a big country. It has a weight in West Asia. It's bigger, much bigger than Israel. It's much bigger than Saudi Arabia in terms of people. So this weight of Iran is there in West Asian politics. So long-term, they see Iran as an enemy. Short-term, they would like to accommodate it only in the case of Iraq, but they would fight it in Syria, they would fight it in Lebanon, and they would probably, as we see now, they're willing to fight it to the last Arabic people in Yemen, because they're supporting the Saudi Arabian Gulf monarchy axis in Yemen.
That's all the time we have for today, Prabir, and thanks for giving us your time. Thank you for watching Newsclick.